emerge out of all this. And joining us today, Rhythm, is the one and only, India's greatest legal senior advocate, Queen's Counsel, former Solicitor General Harish Salve has been watching this very closely. And what we've seen today is really confounding, Mr. Salve. Everyone's talking about it. It's a very bizarre situation. It's a very confounding situation. At one level, Mr. Salve, it's an ego issue. At one level, this has become an interstate dispute. So this is, of course, going to be looked at by the magistrate. But was the Bagga arrest legitimate? You know, what is lost to Mr. Salve in the political fight are the convoluted legalities. What do you make of the arrest itself? Is it legitimate in your view?
I don't know the details, Arnab, but I believe this was, again, one of those cases where chief ministers have started thinking they're monarchs and the police is their private army. So I think anything said rude or nasty about a chief minister or anything of that kind is immediately now treated as a criminal offense and the police swings into action. Punjab police is notorious for this. I've done in my younger days many cases involving Punjab police throwing all procedural safeguards to the winds and coming and arresting people all over the place. And many times it was very obviously for the wrong reason. So this is old practice. The trouble somewhere, and I said this on the other channel, Arnab, the trouble is we as citizens in India are so divided. If Arnab Goswami is arrested, we all stand and clap. But if somebody else is arrested, we say, oh, the system is terrible. You know, we have to take a position. Doesn't matter who the chief minister is. Any misuse of police in this fashion has to now be dealt with very severely. And I think the time has come where we should enact a civil rights law in which a false arrest has to be a punishable crime.
Mr. Salve, as you're saying, there needs to be a civil law. And before Arnab can take the next question, you made a very telling comment when it comes to chief ministers who are also misusing this law. What should the way ahead be? Because in India, Mr. Salve, you would know as much as we at Republic, there are fake arrests and there are wrong, illegal cases that are being put against innocent citizens.
See, partly I blame the judiciary and where we have let things down. I mean, everything can't be resolved at the Supreme Court level. In Arnab's case, which is the ordinary case of an arrest, we had to take it up to Supreme Court to get bail. That should never have been. These cases should end at the magistrate. Magistrates have to be more robust in dealing with these kind of cases. And if we have a civil rights law, I would make that law saying if there is a false arrest, the magistrate should have the power to arrest the commissioner of police. Do it in 2 cases, he will stop obeying these kind of diktats by his political masters.
No, Punjab police in its letter to the Haryana police said Bagga was arrested for his interviews and social media posts and he had used unparliamentary language against the Delhi chief minister. But the allegation...
That is what they have said, Arnab.
Yeah.
If that is what they have said, I'm sorry to say, and we must take part of the blame. We means members of the legal profession. We must take part of the blame. If a police commissioner has allowed an arrest on these grounds, the police commissioner is obviously unfamiliar with the elements of law and should be asked to vacate his...
But the police is more loyal than the king in most cases, and state governments particularly, have been using the police left, right and centre. Mr. Salve, in whichever way that they want.
Now this is becoming the federal army.
Yeah, it's become
the state army.
So what to do with the police and what action against the police? What action does the police face?
But who's going to take action? That's the whole point. It's this unholy nexus which the Prakash Singh judgment tried to break between the police and its command over by the political system. The states haven't fully implemented it. The Supreme Court monitored it for a while. I think they gave up in disgust when they couldn't take the matter beyond a particular level. Ultimately, the need for reform has to come from us, citizens. And I think it's about time where politically these things are treated as unacceptable. And believe me, Arnab, till we get a civil rights law, Article 21 is great, but everything can't be Article 21. You need a civil rights law in which a citizen is guaranteed rights, whether it is against the ED or whether it's against the state police, doesn't matter. these kind of wrongful arrests must have consequences on the people who are effecting the arrest. In the United Kingdom, the police is petrified. If they make a wrong arrest, you can bring an action against them for false arrest and get huge damages.
Precisely, the whole thing. Therefore, essentially what politicians like to do, and they're getting very thin-skinned nowadays. Particularly, very thin-skinned. Politicians can abuse, attack, and even polarize the community, create riots. But anyone criticizes them, they go and take action. And Kejriwal has been quoted on occasion as saying that the day I have a police force, I'll show people what I can do. That's the kind of thing that the police is like your private army. Don't you dare touch me because I've got the police with me. And we'll see what happens in the courts, but at least ensure you're in jail for a few days.
I take blame because my profession must take blame, and that is a part of our system. We must take blame. If you have a strong magistracy and if you have a strong high courts, how dare a politician talk like that? A high court judge should summon the police.
I think you're right. I think it does come down to that. No, it does come down to that.
How much we have to struggle?
No. But the problem is, it depends on how independent the magistrate courts, sessions courts are.
Yes.
And how much action and how much ingenuity there is in the high courts themselves. Rhythm, interesting follow-up coming from you. Yeah.
Mr. Salve, like you're saying, even in our case, it was very interesting the modus operandi that was used, because right like in this case, early morning the police comes and they try to drag Arnab out of his residence. Similarly here, what's very surprising is Tejinder Baga's family said he was not allowed to wear the turban. These are very serious charges. In Arnab's case, they didn't allow him to wear his shoes. His father was beaten, assaulted. There's a case they're doing in that case. Mr. Salve, how legal do you think the police action is when they walk into other states and make such arrests?
There are provisions in the CRPC which, speaking for myself, I think are wholly inadequate in today's scenario. There are provisions in the CRPC by which they have to take permission, they have to go to the local court and then take permission to arrest. In fact, the whole arrest thing, unfortunately, and I'm sorry to say, the Supreme Court has let these people off the hook. Arrest has to be an exception. Today in India, arrest is the rule. Section 41 has to be very strictly construed. You can't go arresting people like this. Why should you arrest? You want him to join investigation, go summon him. If he doesn't join, move a magistrate, get a warrant issued against him. Do whatever you want. And what is that you investigate? You have a social media, go file a criminal complaint. Tell the chief minister who wants, why should it be an FIR? Tell him go file a criminal complaint of defamation and deal with it. But this sort of a thing has to end. And at some point, this calls for a thorough examination of the relationship between the political system and the police and the accountability of the police. And we have to have a police ombudsman, and I think the union government will have to now create that.
But then there has to be a delinking of the police from the state government. Otherwise, every police is going to operate pretty much like a private army.
The police is partly IPS cadre.
No, but their loyalty is very aligned to the state governments nowadays, and the police is completely aligned to the state government.
So I think the union government should set up an ombudsman under a retired Supreme Court judge, and that ombudsman should entertain complaints against police abuse of power and have the power to sanction the police senior officials and name and shame the political people involved.
And there's one question that begs to be asked here. When chief ministers of states have a private agenda, in this case, the Punjab government, now being run by the Aam Aadmi Party, today saw huge protests where people were detained in the national capital because of what happened in Punjab. Isn't it political motivations of the chief minister, whether it's here, whether it's in Maharashtra, where we saw the Hanuman Chalisa recital having the Rana couple arrested, or whether it's the Mamata Banerjee government? Isn't it time that these state governments realize they can't weaponize state machinery, something that you had told the court?
Rhythm, what happened in our case? After all that, and then they realized that the police commissioner, who was the mastermind who gave the interviews against Arnab, he was running an extortion racket. The man's on the run. It's business as usual. The same chief minister continues. Okay, the home minister is in jail. Next man who comes into office. Do you think he does things any differently from his predecessor? Nothing. There are no real consequences. unless we have to fix this system. If we don't fix this system, God be with India.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, we're good. This case is coming up before the magistrate courts. A real pleasure talking to you, Harish Salve. You know, we're really bizarre case. And I think what you've said here is that at some point of time, a system needs to be set in to make sure these interstate disputes don't happen. The only way to do that is to set up some kind of what he says, a regulatory body, an ombudsman.
Yes.
Ombudsman. And I think you're right, Mr. Salve, because I truly think that it's the police, the IPS officers, which will be grateful if and when that happens. Because they too, unfortunately, are totally under the thumb of the state government, politicians otherwise.
Exactly.
Well, a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Salve. Thank you very much. Great seeing you after a long time. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That's Harish Salve. And